Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Injection. For those of you who are attending for the first time, you are most welcome to this platform, and you must thank whoever invited you today, and also, give yourself some credit for taking out the time, at the end of a busy week where we feel like we have many other things that we need to do to actually invest in yourself, some time to be still and really consider where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get to where you're going. So we are a Spiritual Injection, a very unique educational platform. We pride ourselves on bringing the best that our community has to bring, to offer globally, internationally. We scour the earth in order to make sure that we bring the best quality people to you, and tonight is no exception. If you are new to the platform, we just have a few, protocol etiquettes in that we just like you to remain on mute. We welcome your salutations, as we can see now, coming up, we welcome those. Your questions, please post in the chat throughout, and we will ask our special guest this evening to address them, address your questions live. Now, last week, was really our interim session, whereby we were introducing, many of our communities did not know about the Windrush Compensation Scheme. Some of us had heard about it, but weren't sure if it was authentic. And last week, Sister Katie, our special guest, and Sister Cheryl Phoenix from the Black Child Agenda, our special guest, gave an overview of the scheme, gave some background alluding to the credibility of the scheme, and gave an update on certain changes that have been made, and edified us on the fact that the scheme is now more expansive, so incorporates a wider sector of our community. There were some very specific questions that were posed last week, and we invited you and those who are on to make sure that you attend this week, because this week we will be taking a deep dive, to use the words of our host, into this compensation scheme, and really giving you a 360, so that by the time you leave today, you will be well versed, well informed to make an informed choice about how you move ahead with regard to the scheme. If there's anyone who you are expecting to be on the line who's not here, get them on the line, register for them, send them the link, and get them on the line. Of course, we could share information with our loved ones, but it's always better if there's a few of us listening to the same content, so that if we miss anything or if we misinterpret anything, you can dialogue and bounce what you heard off each other. So I'm not going to delay any further. It is necessary for you, as for all of our episodes, to take notes. So make sure that you have, the necessary equipment to do that. And we're going to push ahead with our program today. So I'd like to introduce to you, welcome our sister. She's really taken her time out and taken this on as a personal crusade in order to benefit and as you'll hear, the masses of our community. So welcome. You're no stranger. I'm not going to pretend you're a stranger. You're no stranger at all, your family. So welcome to the platform, Sister Katie.
Thank you, Sister Sylvina. Good evening, all. Thank you for attending the event this evening. I'm going to go straight into the presentation. And my presentation is about the Windrush Compensation Scheme. It's an overview of the application criteria and the application process. So the first part of my presentation discusses the eligibility criteria. We will then look at collecting your evidence, and then we will go on to the application process itself. So what to expect once you've submitted your application. So an introduction to the Windrush Compensation Scheme. It has been awarded by the UK Home Office and the UK government as an apology for the poor experiences and traumatic effects from the Windrush scheme and the Windrush era. In 2018, it emerged that many people who entered the country during the Windrush era had lost homes, jobs, and access to welfare benefits and NHS services. While some were wrongly detained and even deported, many people were ill-treated. There's also a discretionary category as well, which we'll speak about a little bit later on to the application process. So the payments of compensation are intended to compensate victims for such things as loss of earnings, periods of detention, and the impact that the scandal has had on individual lives. The scheme was launched in 2019 to offer payments to people who came to the UK legally, but did not have the documents to prove their right to remain. So this scheme applies to anyone who entered the UK from a Commonwealth economy before the 1st of January 1973, and their children and grandchildren and other close family members, which we will also discuss later on into the presentation. So here are some nations that are eligible for the scheme. St. Lucia, Samoa, Seychelles, Pitcairn, Henderson, Ducie and Oena Islands, Sierra Leone, Singapore, Solomon Islands, South Africa, South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Swaziland, Tanzania, the Bahamas, the Gambia, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, Zambia, the Virgin Islands, Zimbabwe. There's also many other nations that I have not named, such as Ghana, Nigeria, Montserrat, and many others. To know whether your nation is eligible or not, please have a look on the government website, where they have an extensive list of nations that do qualify for the scheme. The government website, where a lot of the information in this presentation comes from, is accessible for free, and I will give you the government website, so please do get your pens ready, because you will need this website in order to be able to access the compensation application forms. This is the only place where you can download the forms for free. It's www.gov.uk/the, so THE hyphen a dash, so THE dash Windrush dash compensation dash scheme. So that's www.gov.uk/the dash Windrush dash compensation dash scheme. Who is eligible? So you can apply to the scheme if you have or have experienced either one of these. So you can apply if you've had losses because you could not prove your right to stay in the UK. You can apply if you've had losses because you are the partner, child, brother, sister, or parent, or other close relative of someone who could not prove their right to stay in the UK. You can apply to the scheme if you represent the estate of someone who has had losses because they could not prove their right to stay in the UK. And they are deceased, basically. So if you have family members that are no longer alive, but they did enter the UK before the 1st of January 1973, and you are their close family member, you can apply on their behalf. That does have a separate criteria, which I will explain later on in the presentation. You can also apply if one of the following statements are true. You came to the UK from a Commonwealth country before the 1st of January 1973. You can apply if your parents or grandparents came to the UK from a Commonwealth country before 1973. You can apply if you came to the UK from any country before the 31st of December 1988 and are now settled here. You will need to show that you have suffered losses because you could not prove your right to stay in the UK, or if you're like me and you're applying because your close family member couldn't prove their right to stay in the UK, then you will need to prove that you are, number one, related to them, and number two, that you have also suffered due to what your close family member has suffered in relation to the Windrush scandal. If you entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, you will be classed as a primary claimant. So there are individual application forms. This is very important to listen to. So if you entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, you're a primary claimant. You will only be eligible if you make an application on the primary claimant application. There's guidance as well as the application forms that are downloadable and printable for free from the government website, the website that I've just read out. So please do make sure that you're accessing the correct application form, because if you complete the incorrect application form, you will be advised that you're not eligible, and that can mislead you to believe that you're not actually eligible for the compensation when in fact you're just not eligible under that category. If you are the child, brother, sister, partner, or otherwise a close family member to someone who entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973 and they're still here, then you can only apply on a close family member application. Again, if you apply on any other application, you will be advised that you are not eligible. There is a third application, and this is for our close family members who entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, but are no longer with us, so they are deceased. This application form is called the Representative of an Estate application. Again, we'll go into the criteria later on in the presentation. If you are applying as a close family member, you must show that you have experienced a loss because a close family member could not prove that they had the right to live in the UK, or that their right to live in the UK was questioned by the Home Office. The family member must be your partner, parent, child, brother, or sister, or some of us may have lived with our cousins and, you know, the relationship was more like a sibling relationship. You can put things like that as well. There is a discretionary box on all of the forms, on all of the different applications for discretionary category. So maybe something that the application itself hasn't covered. And as I said, on the government website, there's the guidance. So as well as the application forms, make sure you're printing off the correct document. So if you're a primary claimant, look for the primary claimant application form and then the primary claimant guidance. Make sure that you read both of them and understand both of them so that when you're completing it, it's more kind of easier to complete. Because the application forms are quite lengthy. The primary application form is around 44 pages long. And the close family member application is a bit less. However, the information that you put in there can be quite heavy because you're going to be writing about your poor experiences that you've had, you know, from childhood throughout life, really. If you are under 18 and you think you could be eligible, then you will need a guardian to support you to be able to apply. If you are someone who entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, then you can, of course, encourage your children and grandchildren to apply as well. But if they are over 18, you will need someone to apply on their behalf. So if you are applying as a representative of an estate, this is for our deceased family members, you must show that the person who died would have been eligible for the scheme as a primary claimant. So that's just like evidencing that they entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973. Again, we'll go into what can be classed as evidence in a few slides. You must show that the person who died suffered losses, including negative experiences, because they were unable to prove that they had a right to live in the UK at any specific time. So even if later on in life they were able to prove that they lived in the UK or later on got their British passport, if they suffered negative experiences prior to that, then or after that, they should put it on the application form. If the estate is administered in the UK, so say for example, if your deceased family member owned houses here or business or whatever in the UK, the claim must be made by an executor or administrator of the estate or by a personal representative of the deceased person. So say, for example, if my grandma, who is no longer here, who entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, had property and business here, I would have to be named in her will or in any legal document as the administrator of the estate or executor of the estate. If there is no will or any legal document, then I must be given permission by a personal representative, such as a child or the eldest child or a sibling, in order to make the application. You must have written permission, and this must go off with the application. So say, for example, if you have a sibling group and you want to make an application on behalf of your parent who's deceased, then you need to make a decision of who that person is going to be, because only one person from that group, from the family, can make a claim on behalf of a representative of an estate. However, say for example, if there's a sibling group of 4 and you make an application on behalf of the estate of your parent, then one application can only be made for representative of an estate. However, you can all then make your own individual applications under a close family member. And as I said, in all of the applications, you have to, anything that you write, just like any compensation application or process, you have to evidence that which you're trying to claim compensation for. If, for example, you want to make a claim on behalf of a representative of an estate, but find out someone's already made a claim, you can, if you are the administrator or executor of the will, you can contest them in court. I wouldn't advise to do so. I'd advise to have a discussion and come to an agreement, but you can apply for assistance, financial assistance from the Windrush Compensation Scheme in order to assist you with this, with kind of challenging the person who's already made a claim for a representative of an estate. Yes. So a person who makes a claim on behalf of an estate must submit all of the following documents: a copy or photocopy of the death certificate of the deceased person that you're making a claim on behalf, a copy or photocopy of the relevant grant or probate of the letters of administration, proof of his or her own identity, so maybe their passport, driving license, or whatever. You may need to consider alternative forms of evidence. You must carry out a verification check if you have reasonable doubts about the authenticity of any documents. So if you look at any of the documents of your parent or grandparent and you're not sure if they're valid or not, then this is your responsibility, but you should only send any verified documents to evidence your application. So what type of evidence would you use? Well, first and foremost, with all of the different types of application forms, the 3 application forms, the forms are set out in a similar way. The first lot of the form will ask for your personal information, such as your name, your date of birth, your address, your nationality. So that's the first lot of evidence that you need to provide. So your own ID, any proof of address, any proof that you've been in the UK since you've arrived if you weren't born here. If you were born here, any evidence that you were born here, so birth certificate, passport, any of them. Then in the application form, it will go on to immigration and deportation. That's where you'll put anything about if you come here before the 1st of January 1973, you would put any of your travel information there. So how did you get here? Was it on the boat? Was it by plane? Do you have any of your travel documents? Were you invited here? Did you pay to arrive to come here? Did someone pay for you? All of those type of things. What was your purpose of your trip? Do you have any travel documents? Some people still have their aeroplane tickets. Some people have communication such as letters or emails from and to the Home Office in regard to their stay or right of aboard. Have you ever been refused services because you couldn't prove your right to aboard in the UK or right to be here, right to work here? Those are the type of things what you would put under immigration and deportation. The fact that you had to continue proving, or you continue to be asked to prove your nationality. If you were nationalized or neutralized, this is where you would also put that information under immigration or deportation. Some people came here before the 1st of January 1973 as a British subject under the British Nationality Act 1971. They came here with an equal right to British citizenship and British services such as the NHS, education, healthcare, housing, and all of that. And some people, they were allowed to access some of those services whilst they were also denied some of those services as well. Some people who come before 1973 travelled back to their home nations or out of the UK, and upon return, they were told that they couldn't enter because they didn't have a legal right to enter. If you fit into that category, put all of that under the immigration and deportation part of the application form, please. As I said, all of the applications, so the primary application, the close family member application, and the representative of an estate application, all are formatted in a similar way. So after immigration and deportation, what you would if you have any, if you've ever had to use any type of legal representation and to support you to prove your right to stay in the UK, then that would also go under immigration and deportation. And if you've ever had to pay any legal fees, all of that would go under immigration and deportation as well. Moving on to the next part of the form, the next category, the main category is impact of life. So that's where you would put how your life has been impacted. Were you turned away from work? If you were, how did it impact your life? So it's very important in this category, not just to write what happened, but how did it impact your life? So how I advise for it to be written on the application form is the experience. What was it that happened? So for example, I was turned away from work because I couldn't prove my right to work in the UK, although I had rights to live and work here. So you give the experience, what was the experience, what happened, then how did it make you feel? How did this impact your life? This is the very important part for this category, impact of life. So you have to explain, well, because you get, for example, because I was turned away from work, that affected my income. I couldn't work. I had to, go on to benefits, or, maybe you couldn't even claim benefits because that happened to many people as well. So they existed just from, doing cleaning in people's houses, or other kind of, childminding type of jobs and things like that, where they could get cash in hand from people because there was no other way for them to work. That could ruin their type of quality of life, those type of things. Many people become homeless or lost their houses and things like that, or weren't even given a house. But that's the experience, that's the thing, what happened to you, but how did it affect your life? So, many people become vulnerable through homelessness and through having no money, and have to kind of end up doing things that they wouldn't necessarily want to do for money or whatever. So you would write those things on there. And it can be traumatic to recall on those type of memories and experiences. However, it's very, very important that you write about these experiences and the feelings and how it affected you in as much detail as possible. And then how you will evidence this, we'll talk about that in a second, but just going back to this slide. So going back to the first part of the form now, you need to evidence your identity. You can evidence this with photographic ID, such as your driving license, any passports, any type of UK ID cards, citizenship cards, work IDs, educational IDs. You will also need to evidence your address. So that would be utility bills, bank or building society statements or letters from the bank, local authority tax bills, solicitors' letters confirming any house purchase or land registry confirmations, any evidence from HM Revenue and Customs, proof of address, doctors, the GP, they're good at providing proof of your address, because sometimes people keep the same GP throughout life or for many years, and they have a record of the addresses where we've lived. Banks do as well, which is really good. And any documents from the Home Office, including your BRP card, your biometric residence permit card, and any overseas or national identity documents. So any other relevant evidence to show that you've been here, but also to show how you've been affected. So many people will think, well, how can I evidence that I've suffered? Especially if you don't, you're not a person who kind of keep your belongings, or hoards documents like myself. But yes, there's many different ways that we can evidence things. So what's really, really important, especially for people that arrived before the 1st of January 1973, is to evidence any document that shows your entry to the country. Anything that shows that you've had a record of you being here in the UK since arriving here. So for example, your national insurance. Some people have had a national insurance number for a very long time. Some people given one quite shortly after they arrived in the UK. Any educational records, any travel documents. Even if you weren't given a British passport, some people travelled on temporary travel documents back in the day. You may have copies of them. The post office still may have copies of them. If any of you are like me and have the same email from many years ago, the same email address, check through there. You may have documents in there or any communications. If you've ever received any type of legal support, they have evidence of you being here, even if it was for something quite unrelated to the Windrush scandal. Evidence that you contacted them in 1992 for whatever reason is evidence that you've been here, of course. And they will probably be able to share with you what address you used back then if you can't remember. And just finding out that information and looking into it can help you remember and find other type of evidence and useful information for the application process. Have you ever been held in a deportation centre or under any type of Immigration Act? You can retrieve evidence by directly contacting the deportation provisions that where you were detained, and you can contact any courts where you were also detained, or if it was by the police or whatever, contact them for the records. For your records in relation to the police, you can contact 101, or you can go online at, there's a Metropolitan Police website. I'm not quite sure of the exact address, but if you Google Metropolitan Police official website, you will see a link. Just make sure it's the official link, and you can make a request for information there, or by calling 101, or by attending any of the local police stations. They will give you advice on how to obtain information. Health records, so GP records, hospital records, your NHS number. Have you given birth to children in the UK? If so, how old are your children? What year were they born? Because if you did come before 1973, you're likely to have children that are that age, or, that were born around those times. So that's evidence that you've been in the country since then, or at those times. Have you ever had any medical treatments? Have you ever been sectioned under the Mental Health Act? That's all evidence that you've been here. Have you ever declared to the doctor, or have you ever been diagnosed of having any emotional well-being issues, mental health issues? Have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD or maternal deprivation, any psychological disorders, attachment issues? If so, this is likely to relate back to the fact that you've been separated from family in early childhood due to the Windrush scandal. Due to that, you're likely to have had fractured relationships in your life. And these things are very, very important to evidence. Even being diagnosed with, or telling your doctor that you've got stress or anxiety and depression, those type of things are the type of things that you can put under impact of life, and you can get evidence by contacting your GP and requesting evidence, or contacting 111, the non-emergency healthcare line, NHS line. So that's 111 for healthcare, non-emergency matters, and to request medical evidence. There's also a service called PALS, Patient Advisory Liaison Service, that can be accessed online. The contact details can be accessed online for PALS, and you can access any medical records from them as well, to do with yourself or to do with your family, even if they're deceased, so long as you're the next of kin or person that is named on the estate or on the will. You can request access to their medical records or records with police or social services, mental health institutions, educational institutions, the care system, social services, banking, DWP. So benefits, even some people think that they've got no records. Well, have you had records that have you had benefits claims for the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years or more? If so, they'll have evidence of the addresses that you've lived at. They will also have any type of evidence of health issues if you've claimed health-related benefits. If you've claimed other type of benefits, then that is evidence that you've been on a low income, and of course you've suffered, because the government in this country only award benefits to those who are sick or on low income and otherwise needy. So again, that's evidence that you've suffered. Because the losses, it's not just about financial losses, but it's losses on the quality of life and, family experience and stuff growing up with your family. There's many of us who have siblings that we may live next to, and we have fractured relationships with, and it's likely to be a result of the trauma that we've experienced from our childhoods, and dysfunctional relationships that of course was caused by the government, who promised our family members a better quality life, a life where you'll be given better houses, better jobs, and in fact it was quite the total opposite. As many people will remember, and as I can only read up about, and learn about through our community is the hostile environment that our parents and grandparents entered when they arrived in the UK with the brutal racism of the British society, not just the public, but the media, the institutions, and it actually still goes on today. And our young people getting suspended and excluded from primary school, having their dreadlocks or cane rows cut off in school, or being told that their hairstyles are inappropriate for education or employment. All of these are also the results of the hostile environment that we were in. And of course, the tensions between the Caribbeans and the Black British people and the white British people in the white British society. We will later on towards the end of the presentation, we will look at intergenerational trauma and how today's society is also kind of is birthed by the sufforations that we have experienced in the Windrush era. So the categories of awards, so areas where you can, what you can claim for, as I've mentioned, is employment. So if you've been turned away from employment or you've had ill experiences in employment and it relates to the Windrush scandal and type of like tensions in the workplace and things like that. Detention, deportation, removal and returns, or even threats of deportation, or even the letters that everyone would have received around 2010, 2012 from the Home Office asking you to prove that you are British and being threatened that you need to prove it by a specific date before you are deported. And also for those that were nationalised or neutralised and threatened to do this before a specific date, otherwise you risk being deported or removed from the UK. All of that comes under deportation and immigration. Housing, health, education, impact on normal daily life, so how it's affected you emotionally back then and still today, including relationships, mental health, emotional well-being, view of society, view of yourself. Immigration fees and associated legal costs. And there's also a wider discretion to compensate for novel or unusual claims. So on all of the application, all the different types of applications, whether it's primary, close family member, or representative of an estate, there is a section on the form towards the end of the form of discretionary categories. Discretionary claim. This is where you can put anything that the questions that are already in the form haven't yet answered or have not yet covered. So this is for things that may be unusual or not yet discussed in the rest of the application. And that would be on a very individual basis, but I can give you one example just to kind of help you kind of understand the application. So this is the discretionary category on each of the forms would be, for example, those of us who may not have been born in a Commonwealth nation, but is a child of Commonwealth parents that come from Commonwealth nations, and you have had your citizenship questioned and also threatened with deportation due to the current or the at the time that they were approached by the Home Office, your parents' nationality and citizenship. So for example, some people who were born in the UK or other European countries to parents who had Caribbean nationality and citizenship status are also threatened that they may be deported as well as their parents, although they were never born in the Caribbean or any other British Commonwealth nation. That's very unusual. It's not something that's commonly happened, but it's something that has happened to people and people that I know personally as well. So yeah, that's just a kind of example to help you understand the discretionary category. So how to apply? So this is a free scheme. It's entirely free. I know people that have successfully claimed, including members of my family and myself as well. I claimed as a close family member. I put my claim in 2020. I received my finances in 2021. I claimed on the basis that my parent, who come to the UK before the 1st of January 1973, was invited here by the Queen in order to be in the Queen's army to serve for Queen and country. He come here, he did just that. He served in Queen and country. Whilst he was training and preparing for the army, he worked in factories. He experienced racism. He experienced PTSD due to the army that affected him, that affected the way that he parented us, and it affected my quality of childhood. I also had experienced maternal deprivation, so spending some parts of my childhood without my parents. In the care system, that obviously had an impact on me psychologically. I explained that a bit further in the form and provided some evidence such as evidencing that I had depression and anxiety in childhood due to childhood trauma. I got that evidence from my GP. I got evidence that I was in care from my previous social workers from when I was a child. And I used those two pieces of evidence to evidence what I had been through. Of course, I elaborated and explained it in further detail of how it affected me, but those two pieces of evidence alone supported my information that I've inputted on the application. So you can explain what has happened to you, how it's affected you, but then please always, always, always remember the evidence. If you do not provide evidence, then you are unlikely to be awarded. And if you only put what has happened and do not put how it affected you, then you may not be awarded because you've only said, I've been through this, I've been through this, I've been through this. You have to relate it back to the Windrush era, the Windrush scandal, and how you have been directly impacted, even if it's intergenerational, even if it's secondary trauma. Okay, that's very, very important. So make sure that you put, first of all, your personal details. You will put whether you are the person who arrived before the 1st of January 1973 or the child, grandchild, or other close family member. You will then put how they are eligible. So I'd write, yeah, my dad come in this year. He come under these circumstances, and he is or is not a British citizen. He's not a British citizen, and I put that he's still not to this day because he hasn't been given a British passport, which is shameful on the British government and the Home Office because he served for this country 3 times in the British Army. Anyway, you will put how you're related to that person, and then you will evidence that. So obviously my birth certificate or proof that he's your next of kin or they're your next of kin or whatever, you're their next of kin. And then after you prove that you're related to them and they are eligible for the scheme, you then put how it's impacted your life. Or if you've put how you are eligible for the scheme, you then put what immigration and deportation issues you've experienced, and then you write about your impact of life. If you are applying for a discretionary application, you would do all of the above. So write how the person's related to you. You would provide their death certificate. You would provide evidence that you're allowed to make that application on their behalf. So either proof that you're executor or representative of the estate, or that you've got permission from the next of kin or eldest child. You would then prove that they were eligible for the scheme. You would then have to prove how their life was affected in the representative of an estate application. Then, if there's any discretionary categories under the primary, close family member, or representative of an estate application, you will add that. What you then need to do very, 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 very importantly is make sure that you scan or copy the application, because once you send this off, there is no way that any person can really write out that application twice, because it's very draining spiritually and emotionally and mentally. It's very draining to write about trauma. So make sure that you copy it either by taking pictures on your phone, scanning it, or whatever. Once you have done that, you then post it off to the address on the bottom of every single application. You can post it by hand. It's a free post. I will read out that information on the next slide or next couple of slides, the postage information, or you can scan it and email it to the Home Office, to the Windrush Compensation Scheme team. You can, of course, put it for signed for post. That's what I done with mine, because I just like to track it to make sure it's got there, so no one can say that it didn't arrive, or so it can't get damaged on the way or whatever. Once you send it off to the Home Office, give it about 10 days, 2 weeks, and then call them and say, hi, have you received my application? They will look out for it, and they will look out for they will let you know if it's been received. They'll be able to tell you whether it's been received yet or scanned onto the system, or both. So then once they've done that, you should then receive a letter in about 3 to 6 weeks, I would say, or maybe 2 to 6 weeks, a letter from the Home Office to say to you that they have they've received your application, and they will be processing it. When they send you this letter, they'll give you a reference number. It's very, very, very important that with this reference number, that you keep the reference number, because moving forward, the only way they are going to give you any information about your application is if you give that reference number. If you don't give that reference number, you may as well say goodbye to your application. It's very important that you keep any letters, any communication from the Home Office about your application, that you keep it, please. It's very important, because you never know if they're going to say yes or no, and if you're going to be happy with the decision or not. You never know if you kind of have to challenge their decision. There is an appeal process that we'll explain a little bit further on. So it's very important that you keep any type of communication from them. So how to apply? You can apply by downloading the free application form from the government website, www.gov.uk/apply-windrush-compensation-scheme. There is a close family member form. There's the link there. But if you just go to that apply Windrush Compensation Scheme or the Windrush Compensation Scheme, you will find all of these links there.
And sorry to interject, Sister Casey, also feel free to screenshot certain aspects of it, so that if you want to keep a record. Thank you, carry on.
Yes, screenshot, yes, that's important as well. There's a close family member form, the primary claimant form. Remember that the primary claimant form is only for the people who are alive and who arrived in the UK before the 1st of January 1973 from a British Commonwealth nation. The close family member form is for close family members or partners as well, significant partners, not just someone that you dated once, but if you've got children to them, if you lived with them for over 20 years or whatever, over 2 years, or other significant categories, yes. If you don't fit into any of these categories, but you still think that you may be eligible, remember there's the discretionary box, the discretionary option to state your information and provide your evidence on all of the 3 different applications. There's the deceased application form, the representative of an estate. Please remember to read the guidance. Anybody can give you information, but it's actually your duty to check whether that information is correct or not. So as I say, I've given you all of the information to check anything what I've advised you here. Please do feel free, go and check that information. Make sure that you understand the information in order for you to be able to best complete the application forms. For further assistance, you can call the Windrush helpline, which is the Home Office. It's not my number or Cheryl's number, or the spiritual injection number. This is the number for the Home Office. It's 0800 678 1925. That's 0800 678 1925. Now, this is the Home Office. I must advise you that the people who answer these forms are not legally qualified or in any position to tell you whether you're eligible for a claim or not. All they are legally able and supposed to do, and all they are trying to do, is to if you request a copy of the application, because you can request one to be posted to you, you can request one from this line. You may ask them questions, but honestly, if they tell you that you are not eligible, that is wrong. they're not supposed to be doing that, and you tell them that you want an application form, whether they tell you that they think you're not eligible or not, you be firm with them, and you advise them that you're entitled to an application, you would like an application, and it's their duty to send you one. That's it. Now, the line is open Monday to Fridays, 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. and it is a free call. However, I have heard from a number of members of the community that they have been given incorrect advice and telling people that they're not eligible when they are. So just be a little bit careful. If they do advise you that you're not eligible, just still apply and let the people who are legally trained and employed to tell you whether your application is eligible or not. Allow them to do it, please. You can email the Windrush helpline. That's at commonwealthtaskforce@homeoffice.gov.uk. I'm not sure how long it takes for them to respond to you by email. It's been a while since I've emailed them myself. So now we're on to the process, and we're into the latter part of the presentation. The process. So it's to collect and collate your evidence of what you may think fits into any of the categories that I've explained. Download the correct form. Make sure you read this form. Think back and think of any other evidence you may need or you may have access to. Again, if you are applying to agencies to request your information, there is something called a Freedom of Information Act request, which means that any official organisation or body has to respond to your Freedom of Information Act request by law. If you send off your request and state that you request information on you in relation to health, for example, if you're applying to the NHS, PALS, GP or whatever, say I request my information on my health records in relation to A, B and C, under the Freedom of Information Act request, then they have to provide it to you within, I think it can be 28 days, 30 days. They have to provide that to you by law. There's also another way that you can request information legally, and it's under a DSAR. So that's D for Delta, S for Sierra, A for Alpha, and R for Romeo. That's DSAR, DSAR. That stands for Data Subject Access Request. Now, you can do that. This is what I done to request my evidence that I was in care as a child. I sent a DSAR request to my previous social services, Googled their name, and you can do this. It depends on which borough placed you in care at the time. So before you were placed in care, where did you live? So did you live in Lambeth, Croydon, wherever? Google Lambeth Children's Services. There's an address on there. There's telephone numbers on there. You can contact the duty team, you can speak to them, you can say to them, can you give me an email address or an address where I can send a DSAR application, a subject access request application. And then in the letter or email, you'd write, Dear Lambeth Social Services, for example, I request evidence that I was in care as a child. My name is, write your full name as a child that you were placed in care as. Not now, because if you've been married or you change your name or whatever, they may not find you. Use your full name, your full original name on your birth certificate, your date of birth, and the kind of years, if you can remember, that you were in foster care, and they should be able to get back to you within 28 days or 30 days. They will get back to you straight away and acknowledge that your access request or Freedom of Information Act request. If you don't, send it again. When I was sending out emails and stuff, if they didn't respond to me, I'd send it 5 times and then I'd call them up and say, hi, have you received my emails? It's kind of a form of kind of professional harassment. Be polite when you're speaking to them, because remember, you need something from them. But, you know, call them as many times as you need to, and email them and ask them whether they've received your information. You have to put it in writing, so it does have to be by email or by writing. And then if it is by pen or paper or whatever, always keep a copy, keep all this evidence that you've been to them and you've requested this information from them. Request that you request it under a DSAR, a Data Subject Access Request, and that you want this evidence. That the Freedom of Information Act request and DSAR requests work with healthcare, employment, education, police, criminal justice system. You can get police records whether you've been arrested or whether you've filed complaints about other people for being harassed, racially treated, abused, whatever. Get all of those records, please. The more you put on the form, the higher your award is going to be. You have to put everything on there, despite of how kind of gruesome it might be or how much it may bring up trauma and put you off. You have to put it on there, please, because a lot of people have suffered in many bad ways, and you have to relate it back to the Windrush scandal. So for example, if, for example, you were abused in some form of way, either in early childhood or by a partner, how do you relate that back to the Windrush scandal? Well, you relate it back to the fact that some people were left in their home nations as a child, and they were not left with immediate family members who cared for them. And maybe it happened then. Sorry if this is bringing negative emotions up for people. If you weren't brought up with both of your parents, and you didn't see positive relationships between the man and the male and the female in your household or in your upbringing, that can affect the way that you experience love now, and also how you give love in relationships or receive love in relationships. If you experience attachment disorder due to having a broken bond with your parents in early childhood, then that can affect your relationships now, and can be a reason as to why you've had failed relationships or not with the other parent of your children, and how that's affected you in your life, or had failed marriages or whatever, and how it's affected you emotionally and mentally. You can relate that back to broken relationships in early childhood. So there's psychological disorders that I want you all to look into. Maternal deprivation, that's based on you being deprived of the maternal love and maternal stimulation from your mother in early childhood and throughout childhood. Many of our people have been through that due to being left alone in our home nations. And that doesn't mean our grandmothers or mothers were bad people, or aunties were bad people, but it's the fact that they were kind of conned by the British government that if you come over here, you're going to have a better life, you'll be able to bring your family members over. And actually, when they attempted to bring family members over, the UK government denied them being brought over. Like, our grandmas tried to send for our uncles, aunties, parents a number of times, and it was denied, and they had to pay thousands and thousands of pounds each time as well. So again, all of those things need to be evidenced. Make sure you download the correct form. Make sure you carefully go through each section of the form. Make sure you read each question and understand each question properly before you attempt to answer it. It's very helpful if, when you write in your application, that you write it in a way of a timeline, so it's easier for the reader to follow. So if you write, for example, in 1971, I was invited to say for example, in 1962, I was left in Jamaica by my parents and promised that they would send for me when they'd saved enough money. I then, was neglected in this way, or didn't experience love in this way, or whatever in this way. And then I did finally got accepted to come to the UK in this year. When I arrived, it was very cold. It was a hostile environment. I experienced racism. I experienced negative experiences in education, in school, in society. They were saying that, Black people not beautiful. It had a negative impact on your self-view. Your parents were traumatized due to what they experienced. That affected the way that they parented you. You had to, at 17-year-old, re-meet your parents again and reintroduce yourself to your parents again. That affected people in many ways. You've got siblings that live around the corner from you, and you don't know them, you don't know their children, they don't know your children, because of these broken relationships that stem back to attachment disorder, which is a psychological disorder. Look into those things: attachment disorder, maternal deprivation, loneliness and isolation, and how that can turn into a mental health disorder. And of course, they can go on to other things, such as isolation is associated with schizophrenia. People who were heavily traumatized and could not recover from what they've been through in the broken relationships, and feeling let down and abandoned and rejected from their family members, they weren't able, and are not able to escape that throughout their lives. So make sure that you evidence these things with any mental health, with any GP records, any support services that you've used, any medications that you've used to help you sleep for depression and anxiety or whatever. Please make sure that you do evidence as much as you can. Reread the form once you've completed the form and completed each section, and made sure that you've provided as much information as possible. Make sure you've provided as much evidence to match your information as possible. Don't just write, again, I must stress the importance of not just writing what happened. So not just a timeline of what happened, a timeline of what happened needs to be done, but then how this affected you is very important, and the evidence. Once you've done all that and you're happy and confident that you've put everything down that you can, and you've provided as much evidence as possible, or any evidence that you've tried to collect, tried to retrieve these documents and the people or organization didn't provide evidence, put all of that in there. So if you sent information, emails or letters to request documents from certain agencies and you haven't been able to, put those copies of those emails or letters in with your application so that the Home Office can see that you've tried to retrieve this evidence. And please do take your time. This is not an application form that you can fill in one session. It's not one of those where you can look at, right, let's sit there and fill in thousands of applications for as many people as possible. It's not that, because everyone's case is individual and collecting the evidence does take time. Read through your application one last time to make any final edits, and make sure that everything's there, and then send it off, please. Send the form to, you can scan and email it to the Windrush Compensation Scheme at homeoffice.gov.uk, or the Commonwealth Task Force if you live abroad or live in the UK. But the Commonwealth Task Force at homeoffice.gov.uk is for people who, for example, if you come here before the 1st of January 1973, but you've gone back to your home nation, and you've gone back to your home nation, then you still can apply, because you come here before the 1st of January and you suffered losses or had to prove your right to stay, and that may be why you went back there. Then you can apply. If you're the children who got left in the Caribbean or in the Commonwealth nations and you did not come here, but your siblings did, you can still apply under the close family member, because you were the child of someone who come before the 1st of January 1973. The postage address is Free Post Windrush Compensation Scheme, and that's in Sheffield. It's S3 8WA, and that's in the United Kingdom. If you're applying from overseas, it would be the Windrush Compensation Scheme, PO Box 3468, Sheffield, and that's the same postcode, S3 8WA, United Kingdom. The process, what happens next, you will be contacted to confirm that your claim has been received. You will then be contacted by the Home Office if they request any further evidence. When they contact you, please do respond in a timely fashion. You don't want to delay your application. You don't want to delay the payments coming to you or your decision by any means. So make sure that you respond as soon as possible. If you don't understand the letter that the Home Office have sent you, send the spiritual injection an email, and let them know what the Home Office have said on the letter, and then we can provide you with some advice and guidance. If you are successful, you will get a letter offering you compensation, a compensation award. If you accept the offer, you must write back to accept the offer, and make sure that you complete all of the boxes on the offer letter and sign it. Send this off in a timely manner. Again, take a photo of the signed letter and send it unsigned for if you want to. I did. I think it's worth it. Do that so you can track it and to prevent any delays of the Home Office receiving your letter. Then Your award of compensation should take about 3 to 6 weeks to be deposited in your account once you've signed the letter and they've received it. So once you've signed the letter and you've sent it off to the Home Office, call them back in about 10 days and say, hi, have you received my letter? Because sometimes they will say things like, oh, we've received it. Let me check if it's uploaded on the system. Or it's not uploaded on the system yet. Let me just upload it for you, so you can kind of help progress your application by calling them frequently to check on the progress. If you live overseas, the money will be paid into your bank account using the international bank transfer. Now, depending on how much evidence and information you provide, if you provide a lot of information and a lot of evidence, you can then that you may get a response and answer sooner rather than later. If you kind of prolong it and you kind of just write whatever you think is necessary and you haven't really followed my advice and guidance or the guidance on the Home Office website, then it will take a longer time, or you may be denied. If you are not successful the first time, you may need to request a review, and then whatever they say to you, please do let us know. We'll be able to provide guidance and advice on what to do next and how to manage it to make sure that you are given the award that you deserve. If you're given an award that you don't think is acceptable, then what you need to do is appeal. How to appeal? So you can appeal if you don't agree with the offer. You can appeal it if the Home Office say that you're not eligible but you believe otherwise. Again, collect and collate any evidence that suggests you are eligible or disproves anything that the Home Office have said in the response to your application. If you are disputing the award, then collect any evidence that suggests that you think warrants a higher offer. So if you think, well, actually, you've offered me 10 grand and that's not enough because of A, B, and C, tell them why you think that you should receive a higher offer. But remember, evidence is key. Evidence is key. Explaining how it's affected you and then providing evidence is key. So you would have to contact the Windrush Compensation Scheme and request a review in order to appeal. If you are not satisfied with the result of the review, you can request for an independent adjudicator to look at your request and your response. An adjudicator will be appointed to conduct an independent review on the Windrush Compensation Scheme decision and how to complain about the handling of the claim. It's best to seek advice and guidance from ourselves if you reach this stage, but also feel free to contact anyone else that you feel is necessary. So I will go quickly explain the intergenerational cycle of trauma before we go on to questions. So the cycle of intergenerational trauma. So say, for example, if you are British, for example, and you live here and you think, well, how do I qualify as a close family member just because my grandparents entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973? Well, if your grandparents come to the UK whilst leaving remaining children in our homelands, that would have affected them, you know. Being separated from your children it does affect parents psychologically, even if, for example, it's parents in the UK that have lived in the UK all their lives and their children have gone in care and they would maybe given chances to avoid that situation. It still affects them. It still affects people if they think that they are responsible for the reason of why they're being broken up from their child. So if your grandparents come here and they were traumatized, right, then of course that's going to affect the way they parent their children that they go on to have in the UK or that they brought along with them. The children that got left in our home nations, of course, will be traumatized psychologically due to what I said earlier, attachment disorder and maternal deprivation, and rejection, abandonment, all of that. The children who come to England at a later date can learn that they've got new siblings who were born here in the UK, and that can further leave them to feel abandoned and not part of the family. They wonder why their parents left them just to have more children. This can cause them to have fractured relationships with their parents and kind of blame them for their experiences, although our grandparents or elders were kind of conned to come to the UK for a better life. This can cause friction between the siblings left back in our home nations and also born in the UK. The family system can become dysfunctional, having a further negative psychological impact on all family members, whether you're born here, born there, first, second, or third generations. This may cause poor mental health and well-being, which can affect the individual in terms of poor self-worth, lack of self-esteem, for example, and feeling that they were left alone because it's due to them, they're not worthy. This may negatively affect the individual's ability to sustain successful relationships during the life course, or even to maintain successful employment in the future because of self-doubt and self-belief. Some individuals struggle to parent their own children due to the lack of support from their traumatized parents or fractured family, but also due to poor experience of being parented in childhood themselves. If you haven't been parented properly, it's more than likely that you will struggle to parent yourself. Of course, it's not always the case though, because some of us do go on to parent excellently. This can lead to the next generation having the negative experiences of being parented by traumatized parents who were parented by traumatized parents, affecting their development, their cognitive development, physical development, psychological development, and so forth. This can then later affect their mental health and emotional well-being and quality of life as well. The cycle of intergenerational trauma. Why are grandchildren eligible? So if your grandparents came from the Windrush era, they experienced the Windrush agenda, the Windrush scandal, which we are being compensated for, and which the UK Home Office and government are apologising for, which this scheme is for. This is why you're eligible, basically. So if your grandparents come here at that time, they traveled thousands of miles away to a new culture in a hostile environment, leaving their children, as they were told that they will have a good job, good housing, and better quality of life, only to experience racism, sexual violence, torture, poor housing, poor quality of food and living, lack of sun and vitamin D, which can cause depression and low moods and things like that, and physical health issues, and poor treatment in society, education, the media, sport, healthcare, policing, criminal justice system, disproportionate numbers in criminal justice system, mental health care, etc. If they're experiencing that, then of course they're going to be traumatized. Of course there's going to be tension. Of course they're going to be agitated. If our grandparents parented our parents who may have been born here in the UK, or some was left in our home nations as children, then of course if they come here to join their parents and any new siblings, they feel rejected, unimportant. They also experience the racism, poor housing, poor quality of food, lack of vitamin D. Of course, that then causes them to be traumatized and be affected, and be told that they're immigrants and refugees and illegal aliens, as they used to call people back in the day. There's a lot of shame associated with that, and embarrassment, and people self-healed by misusing substances. A lot of people had repressed emotions, tried to make it feel like it didn't affect them. A lot of people had to felt that it was easier to kind of assimilate with the new culture and the new kind of way of living. Some people call them coconuts, but don't think that they haven't been affected too. They, of course, were affected, but the only difference is the way that they responded to it was different. They felt that assimilating was going to be easier, when in fact that's definitely affected them psychologically, mentally. And then, of course, if we've been parented by those people, then of course our parents either drummed culture into us or tried to drive us away from it by thinking, well, it is true what white society tells us, Black people, we are kind of bad people and we've come from a bad place, so we need to assimilate and all of those things. Children can become displaced from their culture either by despite of which way their parents parented them or saw themselves. You can be displaced from your culture. You cannot really see other people in our community as brothers and sisters. This is why people can easily, our young people are easily killing each other without a second thought. We're drowned with Eurocentrism. taught that being pro-Black is wrong and racist. The poor experiences of parenting in a dysfunctional way filters down onto us. Many of our children are in the care sector. As some of you know, I am a social worker. I work in the private sector. I manage children's homes, and there's over a third of us in the childcare sector in this country, yet we only make up to 5%, they say. That's very shocking. We're overrepresented, not just in the care sector, but in prisons, in mental health services, and so forth. That's evidence that we suffered and are still suffering. That is evidence that intergenerational trauma is real, and that's how we evidence that it stems down through our family generations. So as I share on some of my events, I had at one time my father, my elder brother, and my elder brother's son all in prison at the same time. So these things, intergenerational trauma is very real, and it does really, really affect us. And of course, abuse is a cycle as well. So if there's abuse in the family, it can sometimes go on to our further generations. And we do need to put this in the forms. Many of us have been through it. And, the government kind of have offered an apology, but all of you need to make sure that you apply and you get this money that you are eligible for, and that you apply properly, please. That's the end of my presentation. There is a reference list. So the majority of the evidence in my presentation comes from the government website. There's the government link that I've read out a few times. Some of the information has come from the BBC website, and of course, direct from the government website. Again, there's this, the last reference is a very good reference. If you can copy that, copy it now, because we're going to take the presentation off the screen soon. But if you can copy this reference, if you go on there, it's got a whole table of information of what the eligibility criteria is. So I know this question is probably going to pop up, but just to confirm to you that you can apply if you are born in England. You can apply if you've never experienced deportation or immigration. You can apply if you've only experienced impact of life. You can also apply if you've only experienced discretionary circumstances that may not be impact of life or immigration and deportation. If you have experienced immigration and deportation, you're probably going to get the highest offer. You can, each category, so impact of life comes with at least £10,000. So if you do qualify for that category, you're getting at least 10 grand for that category. If you qualify for immigration and deportation, you get at least 10 grand for that category. And the discretionary categories is the amounts are given based on the discretionary grounds. So that's not, it doesn't really have that limit, but it is usually around from £10,000 to £100,000 per person per application. So we can now open the floor for questions, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Katie. As you were speaking, we had many comments in the chat just to say how comprehensive your presentation was, how informative it was. As you can imagine, we've got lots of questions, but as we agreed, I will share them with you and we'll work through them together. But thank you so much for your time, for the time you've spent actually putting this information together, and the way you sequenced it as well. Yeah, I see all of that. So thank you very much. The people are on mute, which is why they're not applauding, but you can see the hearts going up the screen. So yes. Thank you. So we'll get straight to the questions. I'll bring a few up now. Since some of these questions have been posted, I hope that those of us on the line were sitting and listening, because some of the questions that you posted were actually answered after you posted them, and also they were mentioned again. Some questions that were asked, it seemed as though you'd missed what Sister Katie had said, but she reiterated it later on. So I do hope you were listening carefully and taking notes. If you were unable to capture some of the information that Sister Katie shared, the link for the Spiritual Injection Telegram group will be posted in the chat. If you go to, if you click onto that link and join the group, we will furnish you with some pieces of information that Sister Katie shared today. So it's important that you do that. As Katie said last week when she was on, it's not possible for her to hand out a number and take, you know, individual calls. It's just not physically possible. There's over 200 of us on the line now. That's just on this line. Remember, she does this across the country. So let's make use of the group forums that we have. And spare Sister Katie, she's already put enough time for us this evening. So I'll go into the questions with you now, Sister. So the first question that I wanted to bring, okay, right, first question that I wanted to bring was, if you are applying for parents, I believe you answered this, but I do want to ask you, so you can clarify. If someone is applying for their parents, can they still apply as a close family member?
Yes. So, for example, that's for parents that are deceased, right?
They didn't clarify, but that's what I assumed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if you apply for your parent that is deceased, by the way, if you have two parents that come before 1973 and they're deceased, you could make one application on a representative of an estate for mum. You would then make one application of a representative of an estate for dad, a separate application. You would then make one application as a close family member for yourself. You would then, if you have brothers or sisters, make an application for them individually as a close family member that may have suffered as well. That also means that your children and your siblings' children may then also be able to make an application as a close family member, as a grandchild under your two parents, if of course your two parents are eligible, if they do meet the criteria, and if they can provide evidence that they've met the criteria. And then if you then provide that what they suffered affected you, and provide some evidence to that, and then how what you've suffered and what your grandparents have suffered, your parents have suffered, affect your children. You can do it that way as well. One application per person.
Thank you, Sister. The next question. Now, you did say this clearly, but I'm going to give the participants a chance to hear you say it again. They're asking whether if you do not have immigration, if you haven't had immigration issues, can you still apply on other grounds? Now, I believe you said that yes, impact of life is one of the grounds that you can apply. And I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Yes. So, for example, so if you entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, people say they didn't have immigration issues, but if you had to pay, or even for free, you was nationalised or neutralised, that is an immigration issue. You never should have had to have been nationalised or neutralised, because under the British Nationality Act 1981, please Google this if you come before the 1st of January 1973. If you entered the UK before the 1st of January 1970, no, actually, the British Nationality Act goes up to 81. So if you entered the UK from a British Commonwealth nation before 1981, then it means that you are a British subject. So you're a British subject under British rule, meaning that you should have the legal rights to NHS, education, healthcare, housing, citizenship. So you should have never have had to be nationalised or neutralised, because by law you was already British under the British Nationality Act. So if you were already British, then why did you have to follow a process to become British or face deportation? That's a threat that the UK Home Office made to you. So therefore that is an immigration issue. It is a deportation issue. So you are likely to be eligible under that category for that reason. If you can remember how much you paid, put that there. However, if you are British born and you haven't applied, you won't be eligible for immigration or deportation issues. If you're British born, you're only going to be eligible under impact of life and or the discretionary category. I was born in England. I'm mixed race, as some of you may be able to tell, some of you may not No, but I am. And my mum's white. I was born in England. I will never be able to be deported from here. I've never had immigration issues. But my father was a person who went to the UK before the 1st of January 1973. And due to what he experienced, I also suffered. And therefore, it impacted my life. It impacted me emotionally. It impacted me mentally. And he wasn't there around some parts of my childhood. And some of those parts I suffered, if he had been there, I wouldn't have suffered. So that impacted my life. Not immigration and deportation, but I was awarded £20,000 if you didn't hear. So yes, you can apply just under impact of life category. But if you did come before the 1st January 1973, you probably did qualify for immigration and deportation issues. You just may not be aware. So download the application, read the application, and that's going to make you think and help you remember, hopefully. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. And we're getting a lot of questions, to do with my parents have passed. I don't have any. I have very few documents. I was next of kin for my uncle. He doesn't have his naturalization documentation. Now you did go through, Sister Katie, many options. Whereby you can trace us, even the fact that you were here, such as having children, medical records, etc. And you also mentioned DSAR. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
So we always think, oh, we won't have evidence. So if your uncle was nationalized or neutralized, the Home Office are likely to have his naturalization paper. It was only in 1981. It wasn't that long ago. Organisations have to keep records for up to 100 years due to GDPR and data protection legislation. There will be evidence of your uncle's right to stay in the UK somewhere. If you can't find his nationalisation or neutralisation paper, then do you have his British passport? If you have his British passport and you have proof that he was born in the Caribbean or African nation or wherever he was born, then there's no way that you can get a passport without the nationalisation process. So if you have his British passport, that's evidence that of his naturalisation or neutralisation. The British passport alone is evident. If you don't have any of them and he wasn't nationalised or neutralised, do you have evidence of when he entered the country? If you don't have any travel documents, you need to contact the Home Office, find out what documents they have on him. In the meantime, you need to contact his GP, his bank, education, the police sometimes if they hold records on us of where we've lived. DWP benefits, has he been on benefits? Do they have records? Has he been in employment? Do they have records? Does he own his house? Has he lived in the same address for X amount of years? They're all records that he's been here. National insurance number. I'm sure that you'd need your nationalisation papers in order to apply for your national insurance number or some proof of right of abode. If he's got his national insurance number, that's evident. All of us have evidence somewhere. Even support services that we've used, do they have carers? How long have they have carers for? Do they have medical conditions? All of these type of things. They've only will have received NHS treatment if they could prove their right to access the NHS. So they would have used a document. Contact the NHS via 111. Telephone 111, it's a free line, or contact the Patient Advisory Liaison Service, PALS, PALS. They should be able to help you find documents and evidence that they've accessed healthcare or that they've opened bank accounts. And remember that you can only have done this if you could have proved your right to be here in the UK. And yes, you can claim whether you've got your British passport, whether you've been nationalised, whether you have indefinite leave to remain, whether you've got a BRP card and all of that. But you can only apply if you entered the UK through legal means. Next question, please.
The question is asking if they arrived to join a parent and only lived here for 9 years and no longer reside in the UK, are they still eligible?
Oh, sorry, can you read that again for me, please?
Yeah, so they come to the UK to join a parent, stayed for 9 years and went back and are still currently back in whatever country they came from.
Yeah. Did they, the thing is everyone needs to understand this, no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the UK or any other nation, if your parent entered the UK If you or your parent entered the UK before the 1st of January 1973, then you and your parents are eligible, period. That is the first number one criteria. Did you or your parent or close family member enter the UK before the 1st of January 1973? If the answer is yes, then the answer to your question is yes, whether you been here, whether you've never been here, whether you've stayed here for 1 year, 9 years, 9 million years, your parents are eligible, and therefore you are likely to be eligible. However, I must make this clear. If you did not enter the UK before the 1st of January 1973, you may only be eligible due to the second eligibility criteria, which is, did you enter the UK and settle here before 1988? You may qualify under that category. Okay.
Thank you. You just wiped out about 7 questions. What you just said.
Okay,
so right on cue, we have come to the end of our questions. There were all of the other questions that were there, Sister Katie, you answered more than once. So we'd like to thank you again. And remember to join the Spiritual Injection Telegram group so we can furnish you with aspects of the presentation collectively, rather than contacting on an individual basis. It's not sustainable, and we want to make sure that we do respond to you in a timely and adequate manner. Sister Katie, the hearts are floating up, the hands are clapping. Thank you so much. And what is actually brought out, and you said this at the very beginning, you also said it last week, Sister, that it can be a very heavy and traumatic experience going through the trauma. And for me, even listening to it again this week, it also brought to the forefront to me the fact that you do actually need to make sure, it would be wise to make sure that you have some type of spiritual anchor that you can, balance yourself with, because as you said, people all have their individual experience that they've had. Personally, collectively, some we have share many things in common, and we also have our individual traumas and experiences. And going down that route, and you said last week as well, Sister Katie, that you are almost reliving it. The mind doesn't really distinguish the difference. So just to make sure as well that you have some type of supportive spiritual anchor that you can balance yourself and go through the process and make sure that you're in sound mind and health, once you receive your compensation. I don't want to keep you a minute longer. We thank you again. I know that Abdul Hakim has had conversations with you, and obviously we'll continue to plan the things that we've discussed. Someone did ask about help filling out a form. That's something that we are in dialogue about. So we're not in the position to respond now, but it's something that we are in dialogue about. Did you have any closing words, Sister Kate, or have you said it all?
I would just like everyone to please, please, please apply. I cannot stress how important it is for everybody to apply, because the thing is despite of what the naysayers are saying, or if people try and discourage you from applying, the only true way that you're going to know if you are eligible is by completing the application form. I am telling you that everything in my presentation can be evidenced to a link that is found directly to the government website, where this is factual information. You must ensure that you apply. This is what you are owed. This is what your family members are owed. This is what our grandparents and great-grandparents and parents are owed. Please do apply. It is free. It is free. Yes, it will be stressful completing the application form, and it may take some time, but it's going to be worth the money that you receive. I received £20,000. Never have I been given that amount of money at once, and I'm not even going to lie, never have I had that amount of money in my account at all, ever. So it's very important that you do apply. The majority of us are likely to be eligible if we fill out the form correctly, if we fill out it on the correct form. It's very important that you complete the correct application. You write it in as much detail as possible. You remember the psychological disorders that I've I've put down. You remember that when people come here, it was a hostile environment. That can be evidenced by Googling newspaper reports about the hostile environment or government reports about the hostile environment in the UK. You can look at other different reports that are written by ministers on education and racism in the UK back then and now, and how it affects us. Do a little research, do your own research on yourself and what was happening in society at that time. Make sure that you explain it in an excellent way so it reads like a book or a biography, and you just make sure that you evidence everything that you put on the form. As soon as you do that, follow it up, you're likely to be awarded. And once you get that money, what is very, 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 very important is that you invest some of that money back into our community. So with the compensation that I got, I went out to Ghana to meet Sister Cheryl Phoenix, one of my role models, and she supported me to buy some land in Ghana. It's all official, you know, it's real. I went there to see it and to touch it before I spent my money on anything. To make sure it's not just one of those like sponsor a dolphin on TV. So yeah, I got the land, and we're going to be building on that soon. I'm sure you'll be hearing about our projects out in Ghana sometime soon. But make sure that you invest it into the community as well as spending some on yourself, but make sure that it doesn't go to waste, and that we are investing in ourselves and buying something that can benefit our future generations. Let's build generational wealth, because that's one area where we are kind of weak as a community, as a race, as a people. So please come on, make sure you apply and make sure that you do something good with the funds that you will receive from the compensation scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Spiritual injection. Before we go, we have another major announcement. Next week, we are happy to inform you that we will be having our special guest, Attorney Crump, with his chief litigation advisor. He currently he is filing a lawsuit against L'Oreal. I just want to just give you a synopsis. There is a private lawsuit being taken out by Miss Jenny Mitchell against L'Oreal for selling her products, which have been proven to be linked to uterine cancer. These products by L'Oreal are directed towards people from the African Caribbean community. So we are primarily the ones that have been using them as they pertain to relaxing hair. The lawsuit commences on October the 24th, and he will be here next week to give us a synopsis and some insight into the intricacies of the lawsuit. There will also definitely be health warnings and health information for you and your family. So bring them and make sure you're here too to hear, so that you can protect yourself and your family against whatever it is that is not only found in L'Oreal, but you can almost infer, it's safe to infer that potentially it will not just be these products that we have, that have harmful chemicals in, and we've heard murmurs over the years, and now here we are, concrete evidence. And Ben Crump himself, Attorney Ben Crump himself, will be here in person, live on the Spiritual Injection with his lead attorney to actually give us insight. Tell your friends, tell your family, bring any of your loved ones, bring them on next week, and let's stay informed. Thank you once again, Sister Katie, Sister Phoenix in the background. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all on the Spiritual Injection next week. For the link, in order to register next week, check your emails that you registered on tonight, because you will be getting the registration link directly to your email addresses. And also join the Spiritual Injection Telegram group or follow any of our media platforms at Spiritual Injection, and you will be able to stay in tune, on time, and up to date with all of our new releases. So thank you, everyone. On behalf of Spiritual Injection and Abdul Hakim's absence, we will see you next week. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks, sis.
Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister
Cheryl.
Thank you very much.